The winter wind howled with an unforgiving fury across the desolate Montana plains as Zara Phillips clutched her newborn daughter to her chest, her tears freezing on her cheeks before they could fall. The wagon that had carried her hopes and dreams now lay broken and abandoned, much like the promises of the man who had left her here to die. It was December 1875, and the temperature had plummeted well below freezing as night began to settle over the unforgiving landscape. Zara had been traveling west with her husband, Thomas, who had promised her a new life in Helena. But Thomas had never been an honest man, and when the going got tough, when their wagon wheel broke and their food supplies dwindled, he had shown his true colors. He'd taken their only horse, most of their provisions, and ridden off, leaving her and their 3-day-old daughter to fend for themselves in the bitter cold. "Hold on, little Emily," Zara whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around her baby's tiny body. "We'll find help. We have to." But as the snow began to fall harder and the daylight faded, Zara knew their chances were slim. She had tried walking earlier, following the trail, but exhaustion from the recent childbirth and the harsh conditions had forced her to seek shelter beneath a large pine tree. The broken wagon sat 50 yards away, offering little protection from the elements. Zara's fingers had gone numb, and she could no longer feel her toes. Her milk was already running dry from the cold and lack of nourishment. As she huddled against the trunk of the pine, the baby whimpering weakly against her chest, she began to lose hope. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her daughter. "I'm so sorry I couldn't give you better." The sound of hoofbeats came so faintly at first that Zara thought she was imagining it, a hallucination brought on by the cold and fear. But as the rhythmic thudding grew louder, she forced herself to look up, squinting through the falling snow. A figure on horseback emerged from the whiteness, tall and imposing against the darkening sky. Zara's heart lurched with fear. In these parts, a stranger could mean salvation or danger. With Thomas gone and her in such a vulnerable state, she had no way to defend herself or her child. The rider drew closer, and Zara could make out a broad-shouldered silhouette beneath a heavy coat, a cowboy hat pulled low over his face. He reined in his horse just a few paces from where she sat. "Madam," his voice was deep but gentle, carrying on the wind. "Are you all right?" Zara couldn't find the strength to respond. The man dismounted in one fluid motion and approached cautiously, as if afraid he might startle her. When he crouched down beside her, she caught a glimpse of concerned blue eyes beneath the brim of his hat. "My God," he breathed, taking in her condition and the bundle in her arms. "What happened to you, my husband?" Zara managed to croak. "He left us. The wagon broke down and he just rode away." The cowboy's jaw tightened and he glanced over at the abandoned wagon. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around Zara's shoulders. "The baby?" he asked, his voice softening further. "She's alive, just born 3 days ago." Zara pulled back the blanket slightly to reveal Emily's tiny, pale face. The man's expression changed, a mix of anger and determination crossing his features. He stood up decisively. "You're coming home," he said firmly, not a question but a statement. "With me. My ranch is about 2 miles from here. You'll both freeze to death if you stay out in this." Fear and desperation warred within Zara. She didn't know this man, but she knew death awaited if she refused his help. "Who are you?" she asked. "Xavier Walsh," he replied, already moving to gather what few belongings lay scattered nearby. "I own the Double Cross Ranch down in the valley, and you are Zara Phillips, and this is Emily." Xavier nodded, carefully helping Zara to her feet. She swayed, weakness overtaking her, and he caught her with strong hands. "Can you ride?" he asked, concern etching his features. I think so." Xavier led her to his horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding that stood patiently in the swirling snow. With gentle efficiency, he helped her into the saddle, making sure she was secure before handing Emily back to her. Then he gathered the reins and began leading the horse through the snow, walking alongside rather than riding himself. "You should ride," Zara protested weakly. "I can walk." Xavier shook his head. "No, madam. You hold on to that baby. I've walked through worse than this." As they made their slow progress through the gathering darkness, Zara found herself studying her rescuer's profile. Xavier Walsh couldn't be much older than her 22 years, perhaps 26 or 27, with a weathered face that spoke of days spent under the harsh prairie sun. His shoulders were broad beneath his flannel shirt, and despite the cold, he moved with purpose and strength. "What brings you out this way in such weather?" Zara asked, trying to keep her mind off the cold. "One of my calves went missing. I was heading back when I spotted your wagon." He glanced up at her. "Lucky thing, I suppose." "For us," Zara agreed, clutching Emily closer. The journey to Xavier's ranch seemed endless. The cold seeped deeper into Zara's bones despite his coat, and she found herself drifting in and out of consciousness. Only the occasional soft cry from Emily kept her anchored to awareness. "Stay with me, Mrs. Phillips," Xavier urged whenever he noticed her head drooping. "Not much further now." Finally, through the curtain of snow, lights appeared. A ranch house stood silhouetted against the dark landscape, windows glowing with the warmth of lamps within. As they approached, a woman appeared at the door, her silhouette framed by golden light. "Xavier, is that you? What on earth?" "Martha," Xavier called, his voice carrying through the storm. "Prepare a room and hot water. We have guests in need of care." The woman Martha disappeared inside. By the time Xavier led the horse to the front of the house, she had reappeared with a lantern and a thick blanket. "Oh my stars," she gasped when she saw Zara and the baby. "Get them inside, quick." With Xavier's help, Zara dismounted, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. He steadied her with one arm while Martha hurried forward to take Emily. "I've got her, dear," Martha assured Zara. "Let's get you both warm." The interior of the ranch house was blessedly warm, the main room dominated by a large fireplace where flames crackled merrily. Martha, whom Zara soon learned was Xavier's housekeeper, led her to a bedroom where a fire had already been lit in a smaller hearth. "Let's get you out of these wet things," Martha said, her capable hands already working at Zara's frozen clothing. "Xavier, hot water for a bath, if you please. And some of that broth I made yesterday." Xavier nodded and disappeared, returning minutes later with steaming buckets that he poured into a copper tub in the corner of the room. He kept his eyes averted as Martha helped Zara undress and slip into the bath, taking Emily to warm her by the fire. The warm water against Zara's frozen skin was painful at first, then gloriously soothing. Martha washed her hair and helped her into a clean nightgown, one of mine. "Dear, it'll be a bit large," before settling her into the bed with Emily, freshly swaddled, beside her. "Now some broth to warm you from the inside," Martha said, bringing a steaming bowl to the bedside. Zara's hands trembled too much to hold the spoon, so Martha fed her, spoonful by spoonful, until the bowl was empty. With food in her stomach and warmth surrounding her, Zara felt life returning to her body. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes growing heavy. "Both of you." "Rest now," Martha said, patting her hand. "We'll talk in the morning." As sleep claimed her, Zara's last conscious thought was of Xavier Walsh's determined face as he'd said those words that had saved their lives. "You're coming home." Zara woke to sunlight streaming through curtains she didn't recognize. For a moment, confusion reigned until the events of the previous day came rushing back. She sat up with a start, looking for Emily. The baby lay in a makeshift cradle beside the bed, sleeping peacefully. Relief flooded through Zara, and she sank back against the pillows. A soft knock at the door preceded Martha's entrance, carrying a tray with breakfast and a steaming cup of coffee. "Good morning, dear," she said cheerfully. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Zara admitted, surprised to find it was true. Her body ached, but the bone-deep chill had receded. "Thank you for everything." Martha set the tray across Zara's lap. "Eat up now, you need your strength, especially if you're nursing." As Zara ate, Martha checked on Emily, cooing softly at the sleeping infant. "She's a beautiful baby," Martha said, "strong too to have survived such an ordeal." "She's all I have now," Zara replied, her throat tightening, Martha's kind face creased with sympathy. "Xavier told me what happened, your husband, leaving you like that." "Thomas wasn't much of a husband," Zara said bitterly. "I should have known better than to believe his promises." "Well, you're safe now," Martha assured her. "Xavier says you're welcome to stay until you're well enough to decide what you want to do next." The mention of their host brought questions to Zara's mind. "Mr. Walsh, does he live here alone, apart from you?" "Oh yes, just the two of us and the ranch hands who stay in the bunkhouse," Martha explained. "Xavier inherited this place from his father 3 years ago, been running it ever since and doing a fine job of it too. Never married, though plenty have tried to catch his eye." Zara nodded, absorbing this information. "And you?" "I've been with the Walsh family since Xavier was a boy. His mother died when he was young and I helped raise him." Martha smiled fondly. "He's like a son to me now." After breakfast, Martha helped Zara dress in a simple calico dress again borrowed and led her to the main room. Emily, fed and changed, rested comfortably in Zara's arms. Xavier Walsh stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames. He turned at their entrance, and Zara was struck again by the intensity of his blue eyes. "Mrs. Phillips," he said, inclining his head, "I'm glad to see you looking better." "Please, call me Zara," she replied, "and I owe you my life, both our lives. I don't know how to thank you." A hint of a smile touched Xavier's lips. No thanks needed. Any decent person would have done the same, but they both knew that wasn't true. Thomas hadn't been decent enough to stay with his wife and newborn daughter, and Zara suspected many others might have ridden past, unwilling to take on the burden of a stranded woman and infant. "I've sent one of my men to town," Xavier continued, "to see if there's any word of your husband or if anyone knows of him." Zara's heart sank. "You shouldn't have troubled yourself. Thomas won't be coming back for us." Xavier's jaw tightened. "All the same, I'd like to know where he is. A man who abandons his family deserves to answer for it." His protective indignation warmed something in Zara that had gone cold the moment Thomas had ridden away. "Well," Martha interjected brightly, "while we wait for news, why don't you rest by the fire? It's still bitterly cold outside, though the snow has stopped for now." The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Zara regained her strength gradually, spending most of her time by the fire with Emily. Martha taught her to use the rocking chair Xavier had crafted years ago for a baby that had never arrived, his sister-in-law's child who had been stillborn. Xavier himself was often out working the ranch, but he would return for meals and spend evenings by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes just sitting in companionable silence. He rarely spoke of himself, but when he did interact with Zara, there was a kindness in his manner that she found increasingly comforting. A week after her rescue, Xavier's ranch hand returned from town with news. "Found a fella matching your husband's description," he reported. He'd sold a horse in Helena and was spending freely at the saloon. Bragging about heading to California, said he was finally free of his burdens. The words cut Zara deeply, though they only confirmed what she had already known in her heart. Thomas had never wanted a family. He had only wanted the freedom of the West and had seen her as an accessory to his adventures until she became inconvenient. "I'm sorry," Xavier said quietly after the ranch hand had gone, "though I can't say I'm surprised by the type of man he's proven to be." "Nor am I," Zara admitted. "I was young and foolish when I married him. He was charming and promised me the world." She looked down at Emily sleeping in her arms. "At least he gave me her before he left." Xavier studied her for a long moment. "What will you do now?" It was the question Zara had been avoiding. She had no family to return to in the East. Her parents had died years ago, and she had no siblings. She had some education and could perhaps find work as a teacher, but supporting herself and a baby would be nearly impossible. "I don't know," she confessed. "I have no place to go, no money." "You have a place here," Xavier said, the words coming out in a rush, "for as long as you need it." Zara looked up in surprise. "I couldn't impose, it's not an imposition," he insisted. "The ranch is large and Martha enjoys having you here. It gets lonely sometimes, especially in winter." Something in his tone made Zara wonder if he was speaking for Martha alone or also for himself. "That's very generous," she said softly. "Perhaps just until spring when travel would be easier." Xavier nodded, though something like disappointment flickered across his face. "Of course, until spring." As January gave way to February, Zara found herself settling into life at the Double Cross Ranch. Martha taught her the workings of the household, and she insisted on helping with cooking and cleaning to earn her keep. Emily thrived in the warm, stable environment, growing plumper and more alert by the day. Xavier, too, seemed to be changing. His initial reserve gradually melted, and Zara often caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. He began finding reasons to be in the house more often, checking the fireplace, bringing in extra wood, asking Martha about supplies that needed replenishing. One evening, as Zara sat by the fire nursing Emily, Xavier entered quietly and paused, clearly uncertain whether to stay or go. "You don't have to leave," Zara said, adjusting her shawl for modesty. "I'm nearly finished." Xavier hesitated, then took a seat across from her. His eyes remained respectfully averted, but there was a gentleness in his posture that put Zara at ease. "She's growing well," he commented, glancing briefly at Emily's tiny feet, visible beneath the blanket. "Yes," Zara agreed with a smile. "She's a strong little thing." "Martha says she has my determination." Martha's usually right about such things. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and Emily's soft nursing sounds. "I was thinking," Xavier said after a while, "when the weather improves a bit, perhaps you'd like to see more of the ranch. There's a lovely view from the North Ridge and the horses could use the exercise." The invitation surprised and pleased Zara. "I'd like that very much." "I haven't been on a horse since." She didn't finish the sentence, but Xavier nodded in understanding. "We have a gentle mare that would suit you," he said, "and we could fashion a sling for Emily if you're comfortable with that." The care in his planning touched Zara deeply. This man, who had rescued them from certain death, continued to think of their comfort and happiness in ways Thomas never had. As February progressed, the bitter cold began to ease slightly. True to his word, Xavier arranged for a riding expedition on a clear, sunny morning. Martha eagerly volunteered to watch Emily, waving away Zara's concerns. "That child and I have an understanding," she said firmly. "You go and enjoy yourself. It's been too long since you've had a moment's freedom." Zara had to admit there was truth in Martha's words. As much as she loved Emily, the constant demands of motherhood coupled with her recovery had left little time for anything else. Xavier had saddled the promised mare, a dappled gray with gentle eyes, and his own stallion, a powerful black horse that seemed to embody its owner's quiet strength. He helped Zara mount with a respectful hand at her elbow, then swung easily into his own saddle. "We'll take it slow," he promised. "The trail's well worn, and these horses know every inch of it." They rode at a leisurely pace, Xavier pointing out features of the landscape and telling stories of the ranch's history. His grandfather had been one of the first settlers in the area, staking a claim when Montana was still mostly uncharted territory. "He built the first cabin with his own hands," Xavier said proudly. "Just a one-room affair, nothing like what we have now, but it was the start of everything." "You love this land," Zara observed, watching the animation in his usually reserved features. "It's in my blood," he admitted. "I can't imagine being anywhere else. When I was younger, I thought about seeing more of the world, maybe trying my luck in the gold fields or heading to the big cities back east. But whenever I left, I always felt the pull to return." They reached the North Ridge Xavier had mentioned, and he was right about the view. The valley spread out below them, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance, surrounded by rolling plains that stretched to the mountains on the horizon. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, taking in the vastness of the landscape. "Yes," Xavier agreed, though when she turned to him, she found him looking not at the view but at her. A flush rose to Zara's cheeks, and she quickly looked away. Yet something had changed between them in that moment, something unspoken but undeniable. As they rode back to the ranch, Zara found herself wondering what it would be like to stay, not just until spring, but longer. To make a home here with Emily, to watch her grow up in this wild, beautiful place. The thought both thrilled and frightened her. Thomas's abandonment had left deep wounds, not just in her circumstances but in her ability to trust. Yet Xavier Walsh was nothing like Thomas. Where Thomas had been charming but shallow, Xavier was reserved but substantive. Where Thomas had made grand promises he never kept, Xavier quietly delivered on every word he spoke. March brought the first real hints of spring. The snow began to melt, revealing patches of earth that had been hidden for months. New grass appeared in sheltered spots, and the days grew noticeably longer. With the changing season came a subtle shift in the household. Xavier began inviting Zara to join him more often to help with the spring calves, to ride to the boundaries of his property, to sit on the porch in the evenings as twilight settled over the land. Each invitation was extended casually, each accepted with equal nonchalance, but Martha's knowing smiles suggested she saw more than either would admit. One evening, as Zara sat on the porch rocking Emily to sleep, Xavier joined her with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her and took a seat in the chair beside hers. "The Johnsons are having their spring gathering next weekend," he said after a comfortable silence. "The whole county turns out for it. There's music, dancing, good food." Zara waited, sensing there was more to this casual observation. "I thought perhaps you might like to attend," Xavier continued, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "With me." The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond the simple words. "I'd be honored," Zara replied softly. "Though I don't have anything suitable to wear to such an occasion." Xavier's relief was palpable. "Martha mentioned you might say that. She's already planning a trip to town tomorrow to visit the mercantile. She says there's fabric there that would do justice to your complexion, whatever that means." Zara laughed, warmed by the thought that had gone into this invitation. "Martha thinks of everything." "She does," Xavier agreed with a fond smile. "She's been dropping hints for weeks that I should ask you to the gathering." "Has she now?" Zara raised an eyebrow. "And is that the only reason you're asking?" Xavier turned to her then, his blue eyes serious in the fading light. "No," he said simply. "It's not." The trip to town the next day was Zara's first venture beyond the ranch since her rescue. Helena had grown significantly since the gold rush days, though it retained the rough-edged character of a frontier town. The mercantile Martha favored was run by a friendly widow named Mrs. Caldwell, who clucked sympathetically when Martha explained Zara's situation in hushed tones. "Well, my dear, we'll find you something that will turn heads," Mrs. Caldwell declared, leading Zara to a display of fabrics. "A young woman with your features should wear blue, I think." They settled on a cornflower blue cotton that, while not luxurious, was pretty and practical. Mrs. Caldwell promised to have one of her girls help with the sewing, ensuring the dress would be ready in time for the gathering. As they left the mercantile, Martha linked her arm through Zara's. "Xavier hasn't attended a social gathering since his brother died 3 years ago," she said conversationally. "Not until now." Zara absorbed this information, understanding its significance. "His brother's death is that when he inherited the ranch." "Yes." James was the older son, married with a baby on the way. When he and his wife died in that influenza outbreak, it hit Xavier hard. He'd always expected to work the ranch alongside his brother, not to run it alone. "How terrible," Zara murmured, her heart aching for the loss Xavier had experienced. "It was," Martha agreed. "But life goes on, as it must, and I haven't seen him smile the way he does now when he looks at you and little Emily since before the tragedy." The words stayed with Zara throughout the week as preparations for the gathering continued. The dress, when completed, was lovelier than she had expected, with a modest neckline and full skirt that Martha assured her was perfect for dancing. "Not that I remember how," Zara confessed as she tried it on. "It's been years since I attended any kind of social function." "It will come back to you," Martha said confidently. "Besides, Xavier is an excellent dancer when he puts his mind to it. His mother insisted both her boys learn properly." The day of the gathering dawned clear and mild. Martha took charge of Emily, assuring Zara that she would bring the baby later but that the young couple should have some time to themselves first. "We're not a couple," Zara protested weakly. Martha's knowing look spoke volumes. "Not yet, perhaps." Xavier, waiting by the wagon he had prepared for the journey, rendered Zara momentarily speechless. Gone was the practical rancher's attire she had grown accustomed to, replaced by a clean-cut suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his dark hair, and for a moment, Zara hardly recognized him. His reaction to her appearance was equally appreciative. He removed his hat as she approached, his eyes widening slightly. "You look beautiful," he said, the simple words carrying more weight than elaborate compliments ever could. "Thank you," Zara replied, suddenly shy. "You clean up rather well yourself." The journey to the Johnson Ranch took just under an hour, during which Xavier pointed out landmarks and shared stories of past gatherings. As they approached, Zara could hear fiddle music and laughter carrying on the spring air. The Johnsons' barn had been cleared for dancing, lanterns hanging from the rafters casting a warm glow over the proceedings. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while musicians played energetically at the far end. What seemed like half the county had turned out, from ranching families to townspeople to a few travelers passing through. Their arrival caused a stir of interest. Xavier was well known and respected in the community, and his appearance with a beautiful woman on his arm generated immediate curiosity. "Folks will talk," he murmured as he helped Zara down from the wagon. "Does that bother you?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "Not if it doesn't bother you," he replied, offering his arm. The evening unfolded like something from a dream. Xavier introduced Zara to neighbors and friends, his hand remaining supportively at the small of her back. They danced Xavier, proving Martha right about his abilities, and shared plates of home-cooked food. When Martha arrived with Emily, the baby was passed from admiring arm to admiring arm, cooed over by women who declared her the prettiest infant they'd seen in years. As the night wore on and the music slowed, Xavier led Zara outside for a breath of air. The spring night was cool but not cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Montana sky. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, his voice low. "Very much," Zara replied truthfully. "Everyone has been so kind. They can see what I see," Xavier said, turning to face her. In the silvery moonlight, his features were cast in shadow, but his eyes held an unmistakable warmth. "And what is that?" Zara asked, her heart quickening. Xavier took a step closer. "A remarkable woman. Strong enough to survive what would have broken many, gentle enough to nurture a child through impossible circumstances, brave enough to trust again after betrayal." His words touched something deep within Zara, a place that had been wounded by Thomas's abandonment, but was healing in ways she hadn't fully recognized until now. "Xavier," she began, but he shook his head slightly. "I know it hasn't been long," he continued, "and I know you've been through a terrible ordeal. I don't want to rush you or pressure you in any way, but I need you to know that these past months, having you and Emily at the ranch, it's brought life back to a place that had grown too quiet, too empty." He took her hands in his touch gentle but sure. "I'm not asking for promises, just for you to consider staying, not just until spring passes, but longer, as long as you want." Zara looked up at him, this man who had saved her life and then, day by day, had shown her what a good man truly was. The contrast with Thomas couldn't have been starker. Where Thomas had taken, Xavier gave. Where Thomas had run from responsibility, Xavier embraced it. "I've been thinking about staying," she admitted. "For Emily's sake and for my own," hope flickered in Xavier's eyes. "You have," Zara nodded. "This place your home, it feels right in a way nowhere else ever has. I just wasn't sure if." "If what?" "If you wanted us there beyond charity. Beyond kindness to a woman in need." Xavier's hands tightened around hers. "Zara, what I feel for you has nothing to do with charity. It began as basic human decency, yes, but it's grown into something else entirely." The music from the barn drifted out to them, a slow waltz that seemed to underscore the moment. Without speaking, Xavier drew Zara into his arms and they began to dance beneath the stars, their steps falling naturally in time with the distant melody. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Xavier murmured against her hair, "with both of you." The words sent a thrill through Zara that was equal parts joy and fear. "I'm afraid," she confessed, "the last time I trusted a man with my heart." "I'm not him," Xavier said firmly. "I never will be." "I know," Zara replied, and she did. In the time she had known Xavier Walsh, he had proven his character in countless ways, large and small. "That's why I think I'm falling in love with you two." Their dance slowed until they were merely standing together, embracing under the vast Montana sky. When Xavier lowered his head to kiss her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, a promise more binding than any words could be. Martha was waiting when they returned to the ranch, Emily sleeping peacefully in her cradle. She took one look at their faces and smiled, saying nothing but radiating approval. Spring melted fully into summer, and the Double Cross Ranch bloomed with new life. Calves born in the early spring grew strong. Crops planted in April began to yield their harvest, and Emily learned to smile and coo at the world around her. Zara found her place in the rhythm of ranch life, her hands becoming capable with tasks she had never imagined performing before her journey west. Xavier courted her properly, with Martha's delighted encouragement. There were picnics by the creek that ran through the property, rides to his favorite spots in the hills, and quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset. He was patient, never rushing, always mindful of the wounds she still carried from Thomas's betrayal. In July, on a perfect summer evening, Xavier led Zara to the North Ridge where they had first ridden together. A blanket had been spread on the ground, a picnic arranged by Martha's careful hands waiting for them. As they sat watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Xavier took Zara's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness in his eyes, "about the future, about what I want and what I hope you want too." Zara's heart quickened. "And what is that?" Xavier shifted to face her fully. "I want a family, Zara. I want you and Emily to be my family, officially and forever. I want more children running around that big house. I want to build something lasting, something meaningful with you by my side." From his pocket, he withdrew a small ring, his mother's, he explained, preserved all these years for the right woman. "Zara Phillips," he said, his voice deepening with emotion. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears welled in Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. The journey that had begun in desperation on that cold December day had led her here, to this moment, to this man who had proven his love not just in words but in countless actions. "Yes," she whispered, and then more firmly, "Yes, Xavier, I would be proud to be your wife." The wedding took place in September, a simple ceremony at the ranch with their neighbors and friends in attendance. Emily, now 9 months old, was passed from lap to lap, adored by everyone but especially by Xavier, who had already begun to think of her as his daughter. Martha wept openly as they spoke their vows, her happiness for the young couple evident to all. The local minister pronounced them husband and wife, and when Xavier kissed his bride, the cheers from the gathered guests echoed across the valley. That night, as they stood on the porch of what was now truly their home, Xavier wrapped his arms around Zara and pulled her close. "Do you remember the first words I said to you?" he asked softly. "You're coming home," Zara replied, leaning back against his chest. Xavier nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I didn't know then how true those words would become, that I wasn't just bringing you to a house, but that you were bringing home to me." In the nursery just inside, Emily slept peacefully, unaware of how close she had come to never knowing life at all. Someday, when she was older, Zara would tell her the story of that terrible, wonderful winter day, how a man's cruelty had nearly ended them, and how another man's kindness had saved them both and led to a love that would last a lifetime. But for now, standing in her husband's arms as the stars emerged one by one above their land, Zara was content simply to be home.